I know, these are very reasonable. These are so cheap. And low.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Okay, so we'll officially call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here in person and also online. I think we have a couple others that might jump on online, so we'll go ahead and get started. In your packet, you should find the minutes from the last meeting, which was March 19th, which feels like a long time ago. And hopefully you were able to review those when Peggy sent them out, and I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes from the March 19th meeting of the regular and executive sessions. Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second? Erica, thank you. Oh, I should have asked for any corrections or additions. I'm sorry. But a motion to accept as presented. All in favor? Say aye. Thumbs up or something. Any opposed? Same sign. We'll just, good swivel chair. Yeah. Alrighty, minutes stand approved. As far as MFCA updates, we have two board members who are finishing their terms. And I'd like to thank Carrie Clear for her service. She's been representing citizens of Howard County, and has been a Howard County resident most of her adult life, having been raised in Baltimore County and PG County. Her career in food service and all kinds of extension related things over the years, I think has been a real plus to this board, so appreciate your service. And we know how to find you. If we get any clarification as a citizen of Howard County.
Yeah, it's good work that you all do, and it's been enjoyable to be along, so thank you.
Good.
To meet you.
Thank you. Then our other member who is rolling off as far as a term expiring is Susan Summers out of Frederick County. And time flies when we're having fun. And her background in ag communications and different events with Maryland Agricultural Council, the networking of how foods and where it's grown, who grows it across the state, I think also has been a real asset to this board. And we also have fun. Too. So I want to thank you for your time and service as well. And then, as all things happen, we have a new board member, which is very exciting. Wayne Richard is joining us and is, I'll be selfish, a Maryland graduate. I was working then, but we did not cross paths. He was an Ag Econ major, which was my dad's major. So they just keep to themselves. But Wayne lives on the Eastern Shore and is a vice president for Horizon Farm Credit, covering the shore, and has been with them for a long time. He's also a farm manager at Charles West Farms in Milford, Delaware. So he brings that aspect of experience to this board as well. And a licensed applicator for Willard Ag Services. That license still current?
No, let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was.
Yeah.
Was licensed applicator.
I carried it for a while.
There you go.
Going back to that one.
Yeah, so, but anyway, we appreciate the variety of expertise that he brings to this board as well. And then we'll have an additional appointee
For the next meeting.
for the next meeting. Okay, yes, to fill these two slots. So welcome. And again, I know you've met with Katie and Peggy and welcome. It's not a fire hose. The only other thing I'd like to congratulate Gerardo. Gary and I were both at a conference last week on agritourism, and he presented his story. And it's very tight time schedule, but a very concise summary of your operation down in Anne Arundel County. And it was a good conversation, lots of good conversations about the role that agritourism and food production and ag education can all be together. It was a good day.
Thanks.
So thank you. We had a little mini meeting. It was kind of fun. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. Yeah. And the only other thing, and then past couple days, I was cleaning out my emails, but Anne Arundel County Economic Development includes ag economic stuff. So their monthly newsletter, I just print it off and look for ag related things. I think in each of our counties, there's possibly another similar publication. If you want to just go to your economic development site, and just subscribe, it's one of those. In addition to all the things that we subscribe to from MDA, as far as news and notes, but at least in Anne Arundel County, ag economic material and activities is included in the whole county's economic development news. Yeah, good extension. Okay, I think that's all I need to do at this point. I'll turn it over to Katie for further updates.
Sure, thanks, Gail. And I just want to add a staff thanks to Susan and Carrie as well. We appreciate that if you're with us, that means you're not with your business or with your family or with your friends. And so appreciate the sacrifice and service to serve the authority. So adding our thanks there. And very much welcome Wayne, because we know the same will be true for you going forward. I do want to introduce one more new face we have around the table. Misty McGlone joined us 3 weeks ago.
4 weeks now, 4 weeks.
4 weeks ago, as our new director of finance. Misty is a CPA, comes to us with deep finance and accounting experience in the private sector, has hit the ground running here, and is already becoming a vital asset for us as we take a look at our finance and accounting procedures and practices. So we are very excited for all of you to get to know Misty.
Great, yeah, excited to be here. And I have access to all the things, that's Heidi, so everybody, so yeah, just moving forward.
And then I've got just a few other updates to cover. Frank, if you don't mind putting slides up.
Yeah. And just a reminder, this is being recorded. So this is the open part of our meeting.
All right, we can head to the next slide. You can go one back. Great. Okay, so I also wanted to share, we've had a couple of market tours. In March, we welcomed Maryland Department of Commerce delegation from China to the market, particularly folks interested in restaurant and grocery investments in the state of Maryland, and had some good conversations with them. And then earlier this week, we had the vice chair of the Howard County Council, Christiana Rigby, join us with 2 of her staff members, and had some really, really great conversations in terms of how the Food Center Authority fits in to the broader Howard County economy. And appreciate Gary and our tenants' willingness and ability to accommodate those tours. Couple other internal, just practical updates. We at the MFCA have just revised our performance evaluation process. That's something that folks have done here in the past, but with kudos to our HR manager, Hanu, for diving in deep. We now have a slightly more formalized process going forward for our staff here. Also wanted to note that one of the big internal things we're looking at is implementation of the Family and Medical Leave Act, which was something the General Assembly passed a little over a year ago, that provides paid leave for family and medical reasons for state employees. We are covered in that, and I am flagging that for you here because there might be some conversations we have later in the year as we look at budget for how we ensure that we can cover folks' absences. Since we are a small team, there might be temp needs or other needs related to that program. And then last in the general updates, we have re-engaged our membership with the World Union of Wholesale Markets. And I wanted to note that we are looking at potential travel for their annual conference, which is in November in China this year. It does rotate, but we are looking forward to being more involved there. I know that was something that Don was quite active in historically, and making sure that we are both representing our region, but also stealing some best practices from other markets around the world. Okay, next slide. Quick update on strategic planning. I've got good news and bad news. Good news is we've made some good progress. In the time period where we had a gap in the director of finance role, that gave me an opportunity to get a little more hands-on. It also gave us the opportunity that we had a temporary staff member come in and provide some fresh eyes, which I think was actually a good and helpful exercise. And now that Misty's here, we're continuing to do a deep dive into our numbers, which look good, but also just our processes and procedures to make sure that that team continues to run at a high level. We've also spent a decent amount of time digging into our leases. Peggy and I have had the joy of finding both the paper copies of our old leases and the digital copies of our new leases, reviewing both what our current terms are, where our agreements lie across all of our tenants, and then also turning an eye towards compliance. We've started doing some compliance audits over some of what I'd call the paperworky type things, making sure licenses are up to date, making sure businesses are in good standing, et cetera. Also working with Gary and the operations team on the more practical compliance issues. I think we've talked in the past here that we have had an issue where occasionally folks will let other businesses operate out of their leased spaces. That's an issue that we continue to face, and when we find it, remind folks that that is not allowed under their lease and that jeopardizes their lease when that occurs. So something we're going to keep focusing on going forward. A couple of parts on strategic planning that are not as far along as I had hoped to be at this point. Quite frankly, the day-to-day has subsumed the time needed to do the formal stakeholder engagement. And so while that remains a very high priority for our strategic planning process, I'm not at a point today to give you a readout or to share prospective goals. We just need a little bit more time to get that process together. And then similarly, with the change in the director of finance and the need for a director of real estate, which we'll talk about in a minute, the demand study / needs assessment that we've discussed for the produce market, we're not at a point to complete that yet, but that is something that remains a goal for the remainder of the calendar year. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions. Okay, next slide. So I'll say one thing that has become eminently clear as we have reviewed our leasing practices is that we really, really need to bring somebody on board with some strong real estate chops. And this is both, at least how I'm looking at it, both the things we have been doing, we have historically done, but also the things you have indicated we want to be doing or should be doing in the future. So it's some of it's status quo, but then some of it is new and expanded duty. And so I am excited to share that the posting that we talked about, I believe at the last board meeting, was posted last night, and we will share the link and would very, very much appreciate your sharing the job posting with your network. And extra thanks to Wendy and Ryan and Miriam for their review and input of the job posting. But we're looking to hire by the end of the summer. You can see the key duties listed on the screen, and you'll also be able to review them when you get the job posting. But this is truly really core to what we as the Maryland Food Center Authority do. We need strong lease terms. We need to have clear and transparent ways to get new tenants. And we need to be able to actually ensure compliance with our lease. So that's kind of under the current umbrella. The future umbrella is we need to be able to look and see what other real estate transactions would make sense for the authority and what else would help us deliver on our mission. So I'm excited about this. We already have an applicant, and the job posting's been up about 12 hours. So looking forward to hopefully get a good pool of candidates. The position will close on July 15th, and we'll proceed to a couple of rounds of interviews. But with that, this person, after they are hired, one of their first priorities is going to be to jump into lease review, because many of our leases expire on June 30th, 2027. And so that is a very good window for us to think about, if we're making changes, what comes next. And that process is going to mean consultation with you all. That's going to mean consultation with our tenants. And that's going to mean approval through the Board of Public Works. And so that's not just a quick, hey, we want to make a change, so we get to make a change process. It's gonna be collaborative and thorough. And so with that, I also would say that now would be a really good time for us to think about who on the board wants to be extra involved in that process. And so, Gail, I know you had some thoughts about that, so I'll turn it over to you.
Right, so before each of these meetings, Stephanie and I meet with staff just to say, the pregame. And so during the pregame, we asked, could we see a copy of the lease? Have we ever seen a copy of the lease? And 34 pages later. So what we thought would be very appropriate would be if a smaller committee worked with Katie and the new staff person in reviewing what's already here with fine tooth comb and working with the new staff to just make sure the board is aware of any changes from their expertise that either need to happen or changes that have come to the attention of staff that folks want to have happen. I did not read this word for word. I did print it. That was a good start. And I think in the past, for those of you who have been on the board for a while, we may have been shown this document and we've approved it. Have we had it to go over with a fine tooth comb? Maybe, maybe not. So anyway, looking for some volunteers. And Ryan is not on, but that is his expertise. So I would like to suggest that we encourage Ryan to be on this committee. I know he was just on the other committee as well, but is there anyone else who would be interested in, I would accept, I need to establish a committee first. I'll accept a motion to establish a board lease review committee comprised of hopefully 3 people.
So
Thank you, Keith. Gary.
Who was the second?
Second.
Second, Dan. Okay. Any discussion in establishing the committee?
I'm happy to support.
That's the kind of discussion I like. Okay, we start with Wendy. And I guess we'll approve the motion to establish the committee and then fill in the extra names. All in favor of establishing this committee, I would call it an ad hoc committee at this point. Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Thank you, Kevin.
Aye.
I'm sure Ben's there. All opposed? Okay, so we have a committee. Wendy has graciously offered to be on it. Any others? If you'd like us to approach Ryan with his background, or if anybody else around the table or on the screen would like to be involved. Now that I'm just curious, I probably shouldn't be on the committee. I should just know when they're gonna meet, right? Yeah. Okay. And we have a couple other folks that aren't here today, so if it's okay with the group, we'll approach Ryan. And if you're so moved after the meeting to read this wonderful document and work with our new staff member, we will be in touch. Okay? So appreciate that. And we're good on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thanks. Frank, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, a couple of updates on some of our capital improvement projects. First is the Maryland Market Center renovation. We are inches away from final inspection on that project. It has been a long project. It has been a longer project than we had hoped. But we are waiting for essentially one tweak that will allow us to complete our electrical inspection, which should then allow us to complete our final inspection. However, as I think we've shared in the past, there were some pieces of work that were part of the original scope of the project that we decided would be better served to be handled after these permits are closed out. And our plan is to combine that with some other planned capital improvements for the facility. So Gary, can you talk to us a little bit about what we're planning next?
So of course, we're gonna move forward with the 7 units first. We're waiting for an answer from the county on whether we can do a temporary occupancy. And if we can, then we'll incorporate removing the corrugated roof a section at a time, as we did at the produce market, and sandblast, paint, reinstall the corrugated, and add LED lighting the entire length of the diamond. We would like to incorporate all that together, but we're just waiting for the county to give us our answer.
And the thinking here is that by bundling this work together, we probably are gonna get more competitive bids than doing ad hoc tiny bits of projects. But the goal is to get folks in this space while this phase two is happening. It is quite likely that the contract to do this will be large enough that we will need to hold a procurement committee at the very least together, and there's a chance we might need a virtual special meeting to approve that, depending on timeline. But we have been laser focused on trying to get the current project completed, before moving quickly into getting additional contractors on site.
Progress, all for your patience and diligence. We'll just leave it there.
Okay, and then on the produce market modernization, you all told us that we should be upgrading the fire suppression systems and the electrical systems in the market. As you all know, this is 100% occupied space. And given some of the lessons learned through the MMC renovation project, we are proceeding, but we are proceeding very, very thoughtfully. We had recently had a meeting where we brought the engineering team in to go through the documents in detail with us, because we want to understand what issues might arise as early as we can in this process before we go out to bid. We are waiting for some renovations we are waiting for some revisions from the engineering team on documents. And then at the same time, we are trying to come up with a very robust plan for how to manage disruption to tenants, since this is all gonna happen in occupied space while folks are doing business. So Gary, you wanna talk about that briefly?
Sure. So Martin and I are trying to go through each unit, one by one, warehouse and the office space, to try to see where we can relocate maybe tenants to one side, utilize boxes in each unit to lessen the straining of product being exposed to the environment, the construction. The other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to mitigate the amount of possible change orders from unforeseen. With that being said, that's also what me and Martin are doing. We're going to try to get ahead of the unforeseen. Obviously, we won't get them all, but we'll try to get the most of them.
And the last thing I'll just note on capital projects is, I think we've mentioned in the past that given our current procurement policy, that locks us into a lowest bidder. And I've been having conversations with other independent agencies whose procurement policies allow them to instead focus on a best value sort of framework. And so we likely will be pulling the procurement committee together this summer as well to talk about potential changes to our procurement policy. Anya has, as our procurement officer, knows every in and out of our contracts and our procurement policy at this point. And I think we want to come to you with some proposals that we think would allow us to ensure that we have reliable contractors who are equipped to do the work on our projects, but we're also doing that in a financially responsible way. Okay, any questions or comments on any of that?
I just want to thank Gary. The other day, dry systems, wet systems, of sprinkler systems, it's real. I didn't know that. So he's also working with that adjustment of what's already there and what could be there. So that was a little engineering this morning. So thank you.
Okay, one last bucket of stuff for me.
Yes,
So
yeah.
head to the next slide. All right, so there's been a lot of conversation, I know, in past meetings and individually about what does communication with our tenants look like? And we have certainly heard from our tenants who want to make sure that you know what issues they are facing in terms of their work with the market. So we have a tenant advisory board in the produce market that's been there, I think, since the start of the market. We are in the process of reestablishing a tenant advisory board in the Maryland Market Center. We've been very, very focused on making sure that there is communication where you all know what we're talking about with tenants, and tenants know that you all know what we're talking about together. We've also been working really hard to formalize processes and procedures. I would say our tenant advisory boards have had lots of consistent participation by a lot of folks, which is great, but that means a lot of the processes and procedures live in people's heads. And we've been trying to translate that to paper. So it is something that is clearer and everybody sort of knows the rules of the road. As a reminder, the right to the tenant advisory board is something that's established in our lease. And so we are bound to certain procedures and processes based on what the lease says. And I'm going to recap that briefly just so everybody's got that in their head. But the quick updates here is the Maryland Market Center, we've had an informal sort of organizing meeting with them. Right now, nominations are open for folks to serve on that board. It's a smaller market, and so we're gonna have to be really encouraging to get a full board. But we've had a few folks volunteer already, and we're hoping to get some more. And then at the produce market, that board has been established, and so there's a couple of votes that have happened recently that I just want to make you aware of. All right, next slide. All right, so this slide sort of lays out the process that we use to work with our tenant advisory board. So step 0, that's not even on there, is essentially we or tenants come up with a proposal or change to how the market operates. And often that means a change to market rules or a change to processes or procedures that impact how people function day to day in the market. At that point, we consult with the tenant advisory board, and the official language is on material matters. So if anybody wants to know material matters, they can bug Miriam. So we consult, and our tenant advisory board meetings are generally quarterly. Then after we consult with them and the board of 7 people votes on the issue, then we circulate a written notice of that information to all tenants, and then we canvass all tenants, which essentially means we ask them to vote on how they feel about that proposal. Then, based on the vote we get back, we can either accept the tenant's recommendation, we can modify their recommendation, or we can reject their recommendation. And now if we accept or modify it, then that's it. We just go do that thing. If we reject the recommendation, then what happens is either we wait 45 days to implement it, or if it's urgent, we can implement it right away, but then we have to consult with them again later. But during that 45-day pause, our tenants have a right to appeal to you all as the board of directors to say, hey, we as a majority of tenants thought this was a good idea. The MFCA staff told us no, we think that that's incorrect. To everyone I have polled, no one recalls this actually ever happening, but I do think you should all be aware of that this is the process. And so at that point, then you all would either accept the appeal or reject the appeal, and then we would proceed accordingly. So that's sort of the process. Questions on that? Okay, so then I'm just gonna very briefly just give you a little bit of insight into the 3 things folks recently voted on and where we plan to be headed. So next slide, Frank. Excuse me. First is a policy around parking. So right now we have non-tenant haulers, which are exactly what you think they are. They are people who are not the business of the tenant themselves, but who provide hauling services for the tenants. They're able to essentially pay $300 a year for market registration, which means that they can come in and out of the market without paying gate fees and can also park in the market. And that money collected currently offsets tenant service expenses. The tenants have proposed that instead of making that a $300 a year fee, it instead becomes a $250 a month fee. And the rationale that they have for that is we're essentially providing secure parking for those folks. And $250 a month is much, much closer to market rate for secure parking versus just considering it an access to the market fee. And so tenants have voted on this. A majority of tenants support this proposal. this is something we think we can implement, but we're gonna have to think carefully about how many spots can one tenant sponsor? How do we make sure registration happens so we can clearly identify those vehicles? Because the other part of this is that helps us understand who's allowed to be in the market and who's not. And so then those who aren't would be towed. There's details to be figured out about how we would implement this, but we think we can. And Gary, I wanna make sure you have a chance to share anything else on that.
Sure, and it's $250 per vehicle.
Oh,
Yes.
Basically what we're gonna do is we have a map of the market, has all the spaces, marked, and we're gonna go through it and try to. What we have is we have some, over the road truckers that have to, they pay to get in the market to park for a short period of time while they rest, and then they go back out on the roads. We have to incorporate that into this process, and we're just getting a plan together now.
Next slide. Next issue is sort of related to the first one. Currently, the MFCA has 13 parking spaces on the side of the market that we have entered into license agreements with outside trucking companies. This has existed, I think, around 10-ish years from what I've been able to pull. This is purely a paid to park. These folks are not sponsored by tenants, do not necessarily have any relationship with our tenants, and they are currently paid $200 a month. Our tenants have proposed we eliminate those spots and essentially use them for the other parking that we just discussed. And the majority of tenants voted to support that proposal. This is one I think as staff, I think we plan to reject. And it's kind of a reject / modify. I think I have concern with setting the precedent that tenants can recommend we cancel somebody else's lease or license agreement. The difference here being a license agreement means you are entitled to a spot, but that spot can change versus a lease for a specific spot, but they're really equivalent. And so I think that there is a precedent concern over saying that, a majority of tenants say we're gonna kick somebody out of the market. And I think that that's a management decision. That being said, I certainly understand making sure that this is not a sweeter deal than the other parking we just talked about. And so what I would propose to do is increase with notice, with the notice required under the agreements, increase these spots to $250 a month to match the others. And that while these funds don't offset tenant service expenses, I do think, and it equates to a little over $30,000 a year. So if we were to get rid of that, we would have to find that 30 grand elsewhere. What I think we can do though is commit to dedicating those funds to capital improvements in the produce market. And I think that's something we can do pretty clearly. All right, and then last one. And this one is where it gets a little, there's layers, let's say. So, okay, so per our current market rules, when tenants are canvassed or when tenants vote through that process we just talked about, their votes are counted as one vote per unit. So if I have 3 units, I get 3 votes. If I have 6 units, I get 6 votes. About a month ago, I received a petition from 19 of the 28 companies in the market asking us to reconsider that policy and instead consider 1 vote per company. So whether you have 10 units or you have 1 unit, your vote counts the same. My view is anytime we have 19 tenants on the same page about something, that's worthy of additional conversation. And so we talked through this with the tenant advisory board. They voted to oppose any changes to how voting was conducted. And then we put this out to vote to tenants, and a majority, when counted by unit, because again, that is our current process, they voted to oppose this proposal. And this has been in place in the market rules since 2017, from what I was able to pull. And this is one where in terms of next steps, I'll tell you, I'm struggling because on one hand, our larger folks make the argument that they are paying a significant a significantly larger amount in expense reimbursement and in rent compared to smaller folks, and therefore, if we're voting on changing fees, they are going to be disproportionately impacted. On the other hand, some of our smaller folks are saying, well, why should I vote? Why should I participate when only a few companies can effectively make decisions for the market? So this is one where we're still trying to think through how best to approach, and I'd be interested in, any discussion folks might have.
Oh. Kevin? Kevin, go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. Katie, thanks for this, and thanks for that graphic on the process and the policy. Do you know, or does staff know where the concept of per unit versus per tenant came from?
So we had a good staff scavenger hunt through a variety of files, and what we were able to find were minutes from a tab meeting in 2016 where this issue came up. Prior to that point, as far as I am able to tell, the vote was 1 vote per company. There was discussion in that meeting, to change the vote in the tab. And that was rejected, and then instead they decided to change the vote when all tenants were canvassed. The part that's a little tricky is we haven't been able to find a record of all tenants being consulted on that change. But the change was made to the market rules and was included in the market rules that all of our tenants have signed as a part of their current lease. However, our market rules can be changed at any time, as long as we consult with our tenants.
Is that clear as mud, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I have more questions. I wonder do you have a breakdown of, because either way you go, if it's by tenant or it's by unit, by tenant meaning by company or by units held, someone could feel disadvantaged. Do you have a breakdown of how many, I'm sure you do, of how many tenants and how many units each of them have? And I'm guessing, you kind of reference that on the last 2 votes or recommendations, it's beginning to feel like the larger tenants are having the say. And that will quickly, my guess is, if I'm a small tenant, you'll feel disadvantaged if in those last votes, if you're one of the ones that is going to be charged X much, more per parking, a bigger tenant would be able to absorb that, and so a higher fee would be fine.
So just so folks have it in their heads, there are 28 companies in the produce market and 101 units. And so of those, 10 companies have 1 unit, 6 companies have 2 units. And I don't have those pulled exactly, but so that's of the smallest 16 companies that would have essentially 22 votes. And then if you look at the biggest 4 companies would have 41 votes.
Yeah. So on our website, which I don't delve into all the time, but there is this lovely list of the tenants and the unit numbers, which I assume is pretty, and the range again is 1, 3, 7. So you all know I don't do math well, but anyway. Good chart. Thank you, whoever that on the website. Told us to look. Oh, Peggy. So Kevin, other observations or any other gut reactions around the table to? Oh,
Well, I was just gonna say, the last bullet point on the tenant proposal is the majority of tenants, when counted by unit, oppose this proposal, so that's not good. You're not surprised by that?
No.
Yeah, by unit, so.
So there is not urgency to take immediate action.
So we do have to make a
We
decision.
have to make a decision.
Well, and by that I mean at where we are in the process, staff needs to make a decision.
Correct.
This has not come to you all for appeal yet, but the timing was such and this feels core enough to the structure of our market that I was interested in thoughts. But to be clear, we are at the step of the process where staff has to make a decision.
Davey, how large is the second largest?
11. Largest is 12,
So
second
two of
largest is
them
11.
can make the determination on a majority vote. I think that's possible.
Is there a way to like max out the amount of votes you get? That would probably be much,
Right.
reasonably, so we should don't know what that number would be.
Let's get that.
With the acknowledgement that there is a little bit of time urgency.
So we need to report out what the vote was and what we are going to do. If there is a desire for additional options, that is certainly something we could into consult with the tenants and then come back to the board. Is that,
I think that makes sense. Just to hear from them again and see if they can come up with some other options.
Does anybody want to be a sounding, oh,
got two hands.
where are we? Kevin? Oh, and
I think Stephanie had her hand
Oh,
up.
Stephanie was first, thank you. I'm
Thank
still a
you.
mother, but I don't have eyes in the back of my head, sorry. Stephanie,
You're
please.
pretty good. You're pretty good though, Kel. I think, you know, in the spirit of the conversation about, you know, having the smaller tenants and we keep acknowledging that they're smaller, I think we need to keep that in mind, right? But they've made it to the market and we want them to have equity while they're here because they clearly bring something that people want there, which is why they're able to be sustainable. If we do have the option for staff to try to maybe go back and maybe talk to tenants or come back with some other proposals. I think we have our next meeting in September. I think that would be preferred. I would love for us to just maybe do a little more canvassing and you all to come back with something before we, the board, take any action. And also with the, you know, the looming entrance of a real estate worker or real estate director here, I think that'll add some real valuable context to like how we go forward in those conversations as well. So if we have the option to kind of punt it back to staff and have you all try to come up with something else that may seem a little more fair to the other tenants and actually the process at large. Because also to me, it seems like, I mean, it's almost what we don't want the center to become is like a pay to play, because then it offers no protections or incentive for smaller vendors to come and partake and spend their time and their money with us at the center.
Especially if we want to encourage startups and those kinds to come in. That what Stephanie said will affect that.
Yes.
So
I would echo everything Stephanie just said. I think there's probably a way to come up with a new formula so it's not 1-to-1. Maybe it's, you know, 1 vote per unit, unless you are renting, you know, leasing multiple units, then there could be some equation of for every 5 units you get a second vote, something like that still, you know, still gives deference to someone who's invested more and is a bigger player and has a bigger role in the market. Because, you know, as Katie and I have discussed, a lot of the smaller businesses that are there, actually there's a symbiosis with the bigger ones. And so it is beneficial to the smaller ones to sometimes have the bigger ones there, but they shouldn't be dominated by that. So there's probably some other equation. I can think of an agricultural cooperative in Southern Maryland that does something like that, where you know, every vineyard gets a vote unless you own multiple vineyards. It's then by acreage, right? So there's some equation there that gives a bigger player slightly more value in the voting process, but they can't dominate.
that gives us enough to get to work.
So I don't think any formal action, but I think the conversation is leading to, feel free to reach out for some of these people that can do math in their head, not me. But that there may be other options to present and have that conversation back and forth with the tenants. And I appreciate you, honoring the time frame that you need to report out. So is that good consensus wise around the TV screen and table? Okay. I also want to thank Monica for through the chat volunteering for the lease committee. So I will still reach out to Ryan, but if anybody else feels so compelled, we're good. Phew, lots of exciting things.
And those are all of my updates.
Those are all of your update. Oh. You're right, it is. Wayne's never sat next to me in a meeting. Sorry, but I do this all the time. Arrows and whatever. The other thing that the board has been working on, a subcommittee, Stephanie offered to chair this, is performance review of the executive director. We are really just about exactly at the 1 year anniversary, I think. August of starting, right. This decision was in June. So time flies, but at this point, and I want to thank Stephanie and Ryan and Wendy, was that your committee?
Cassie.
Cassie, that's right, you were. Anyways, I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie to discuss the process and what we have to look at and hopefully go with. Thank you, Stephanie.
Wonderful. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't have the packet because I'm traveling, but hopefully you all are looking at the procedures page. So in doing this process, we wanted to better define a performance review process for the ED. As best we could tell, we had not had anything formal that we could refer back to. We really wanted to give some guardrails for success for Katie, and then actually something for the board for us to be accountable for holding her to as well. So what we have drafted and gone over with Gail and Katie, just to make sure that honestly it all made sense, is a procedure for how we will conduct the performance performance review for the ED going forward. Again, currently there was no formal process, so this was like a little bit of development, but it is something that does need to be approved by the board in moving forward. So the first document that I imagine you're seeing is the procedures, which just outlines the steps that the board will take, the chair will take, the review committee, so a ad hoc committee, volunteer or nominate all the time, for who initiates the process, what the ED's role in the process will be, and kind of a timeline. We tried to align the timeline that is opposite of what the staff and Katie are right now trying to institute themselves, just because it gives an offset so that she is not having, or the ED is not having to do their review at the exact same time as the staff, but it still lands in a budget cycle so that it can be in consideration for the next year's budget for the ED. And then also the rest of the documents that should have been included were just the actual forms, right? So there were 2 forms, one that the ED fills out, which actually gives information to the board in order for us to judge, gives us some metrics of the day-to-day operations, and outlines the sections that are based on the actual job description so that we can measure. And the second one is a form that the board fills out. Preferably, first it would be the actual formal committee, but then we would go out to the board so that the board could give input into those and actually see the metrics that were given by the ED as well, and have some final input before the board chair and vice chair have the actual conduct the performance review meeting with the ED. This first process, you'll see a lot of reference to kind of operational plans or strategic plans. It really is going to land a lot in the ED's bucket this year. If we agree to go with this, Katie's going to have to kind of guide that process because we don't have kind of metrics to hold her to. Hopefully, in the next year, we will work on that and begin to build an operating plan or a strategic plan for the board so that we can give some metrics for the ED to have as a guide rail throughout the next year in like a 3 to 5 year plan. But for right now, we don't have that. We're just really going off the work that we can judge ourselves from the last year of Katie's experience, and then also what she provides this year for that document. But that is the recommendation for the board. If the board approves this today, then we will be able to begin this process in June, probably going into July, and still kind of meet that start time of her 1 year of service so that we can move forward and give a performance review this year for Katie. That's it. Anyone have any questions?
Again, I want to thank Cassie and Stephanie and Brian. I'm literally cutting and pasting. I think several of us sent some documents of, oh, this is what XYZ organization does, and go for it. And anyway, thank you very much for the thoughtfulness here. I can accept a motion to approve this packet of review process as presented and allow the performance review committee to make minor alterations where needed. Then if we have a motion to do that, then we can go into any further discussion if that motion is made. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the executive director performance review process, which includes the self-evaluation and the board evaluation, and allow the performance review committee to make minor alterations as needed. Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second? Thank you, Carrie. Okay, any further discussion on the documents that right now I think are extremely unique to this organization? So I welcome any other discussion or comments. Some of us have seen them in different versions, but I sure appreciate the work of the committee. If there aren't any questions, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor of accepting this packet, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And any abstains? All right, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much. We'll date this and go forward. All right, I think we are down to introducing our new staff member again, and the first packet of revenue and expenses in our packet is kind of in the middle.
Graduation.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are our statements of revenue and expenses. This is as of March 31st, 2026. So Q3. Just to give you a kind of high level overview of what we're looking at, we have March actuals, and then we have year to date to write that year 26, and that's prior year and prior year to date. And this is showing us revenue from entrance fees and other miscellaneous revenue specific to a center, and then in addition to that, expenses related to that market. So you can see for MMC, I would probably focus on the kind of fiscal year 26 column. We are basically flat in terms of deficit and surplus. So the service expense reimbursement, that last line before that, is what we're billing to the tenants to cover or offset these expenses that. For the produce, there is more to explain, and this impacted MMC as well. It's not as much. You can see that we do have a deficit year to date. This is primarily driven by the snow and weather related storms late January and February. So that required us to pay emergency staff, pay to the maintenance team, and then also fuel, et cetera, to figure all of that. Would also say that it is important to note that we didn't bring in any outside services, and we did it all in-house. So while it was, a lot to do and caused an additional expense, it was definitely more cost-effective approach to keep the markets open. Yes, definitely. It sounds like it was a lot
Mhm.
to cover.
We're gonna forget about ice for a while. The 2-inch thick ice, lowercase ice.
Any questions?
And then we do have one revision to the October statements that you previously had accepted. And Frank is pulling that up and highlight on the screen, and Misty can explain specifically the change. It's not that there was an error in there, it was upon further reflection with new eyes, folks decided it would be more appropriate to record this in a different fashion. And so we just wanted to make sure that that was transparent to you all, and you knew that we were republishing these with some revised numbers. So Misty, go ahead.
Sure, I echo everything that Katie said. It was really related to the timing of when we reported a payroll run. So what we determined was that it really belonged in the month of October to give a more true picture of the October performance. So we moved that cost. Again, total cost didn't change, total cost across the different markets didn't change. It was just the timing of when we were recognizing it. So that's where you can see, it's kind of hard to see up there, but the salaries and wages line item you can see is higher. And then in addition to that, we did make another small change. So in that technical and special fees line, we've decided to discontinue using that. So this is where the contracted employees, on our payroll, but just classified as contract employees. And I think we only have one right now. It just made more sense for us to roll that to align with how the state would view those employees, et cetera, roll them into the salaries line. So that's what we've done there.
Okay, thank you. Fresh eyes are always good. So without any of those temps or anything would be just thrown into salaries. Yeah.
Well, so just to be clear, temporary employees who are subcontracted, so we're actually paying a vendor for them, they're in the contractual services line. These are considered by the state of Maryland, I guess, contract employees, but they are on our payroll. Those are the ones that hold in, so.
It's contract because they're contracted for a specific number of hours per week.
Got it.
Which is very confusing terminology.
Got it.
They're essentially.
Right, okay. Thank you. Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the March 2026 and revised October 2025 statements of revenues and expenses. Thank you, Darren. There a second? And I'll go to the TV screen. Anybody up there with a second?
I can second it.
Thank you, Monica. That's Monica's voice, right? Monica, yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand. Okay. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you. We like, I'm thank you for the color ink. Okay. At this point, I will entertain a motion to end the regular session and go into executive session under the general provisions of Article 3-305B to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice, consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. Do I read the rest of it? At the end of the executive session, a motion will be made to adjourn and the meeting will conclude. So, would you like me to read that again before somebody moves it? Entertain a motion to end the regular session, go into executive session under provisions of Article 3-305B, consult with counsel to obtain legal advice, consult with staff, consultants, and other individuals about pending or potential litigation. At the end of executive session, a motion will be made to adjourn and the meeting will conclude. Thank you, Jara. Is there a second? Thank you, Wendy. Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. So we are now